Sandra is a beautiful and intelligent woman from the western part of Africa. She was born into a very rich family and inherited a lot from her late parents: houses, land and chains of businesses, hotels, supermarkets, etc. She was well educated and independent. Everyone admired her. One day, she met a man named Steve. He was kind, respectful, and she fell in love with him. Steve was not as rich as Sandra, but he truly loved her, and she believed his love was pure. When Sandra told her family about Steve, they became unhappy. They believed Steve only wanted her for her money. But Sandra felt otherwise. She had already fallen for Steve. A year after courting, they decided to get married. And so Sandra's mum called and gave her a warning. If you're so determined to marry him, fine, but never ever hand over the companies, houses or money to him. Not even out of love. You can never fully trust a man, she said. Sandra replied kindly, "Thank you, Ma, but I'm grown. I know what I'm doing." So they got married in a grand manner. The whole town talked about the wedding for weeks. After the wedding, Steve treated Sandra like a queen. He was caring, romantic, and very supportive. Everyone admired their love. After some years, they had 2 children, a girl named Janie and a boy named Jackson. Steve worked as a manager in a small company, while Sandra continued to run her father's large business. For the first few years, everything seemed perfect. But after 6 years of marriage, Sandra noticed Steve often looked sad and depressed. When she asked, he said it was just stress from work. For 6 months, Sandra begged him to open up. And finally, he did. Steve said, "I feel like a failure. Everything we have belongs to you. Our home, the properties are all in your name. I can't even complete the house project I have been on for years. I feel ashamed in front of my friends and family." Sandra reminded him, "I once offered to help you build that house or start your own business, but you said no. You told me you wanted to take care of me as the man you are." Steve replied, "I was hoping you'd insist. But when you stopped asking, I felt like you didn't care. Maybe if you trusted me, you'd hand everything over to me." Sandra was shocked. She said, "Giving you all my inheritance won't prove my love. I'm happy to help you build your own success, but I won't hand over what my parents worked so hard for." After that incident, things changed in their home. The once happy couple became like strangers. They still lived together, but the love seemed lost. A year later, Sandra asked Steve to sit with her. She handed him an envelope. Inside were documents, titles to all the houses her parent left her, including a hotel, the company, and a supermarket, transferring all to him. Steve was overjoyed. He smiled and said, "That's my girl." Then he kissed her and said, "This calls for a celebration." So they set out for a special dinner. Everything seemed fine again. A day after, he called her and told her to stop working and let him run the company alone. She agreed. But just 2 months later, Steve started coming home late. Sometimes he didn't come home for days. When Sandra asked, he shouted at her. Then one day she caught him with another woman in his car. He told her to mind her business. Eventually he told her he wanted to marry another wife. Sandra refused, but he said he would marry a new wife no matter what. He reminded her that the houses and company now belonged to him. She was shocked to hear that from him. Sandra said, "These were my parents' properties. You promised you loved me for me." Steve laughed and said, "I never loved you. I saw an opportunity and took it. Now you can pack your things and get out if you want." His new wife joined in the insults. Sandra cried deeply. Then Sandra wiped her tears, picked up her phone, and made a call. 10 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. Steve opened it. It was Sandra's uncle and her lawyer. Steve laughed. "Are you here to beg? It's too late. I don't need Sandra as a wife again, so don't even beg for her." Sandra stood up calmly and said, "No, Steve, you are the one leaving this house." Steve shouted, "You must be joking. This is now my house. Remember, you signed everything over to me. Here are the papers." Sandra smiled and said, "They're fake." Her lawyer stepped forward and said, "Yes, they're fake. She and her uncle came to me before she gave you anything. It was all a test to see your true intentions." Steve froze. The lawyer continued, "We set it all up. You have no legal claim to the property or the companies. And don't even bother going back to the companies too, as the staff have already been told not to let you in again." Steve panicked. "Oh my God! I left my job! I sold everything I had!" "You are evil, Sandra." His new wife turned to him and shouted, "Steve, what's going on? You said everything was yours." Steve snapped, "Shut up." Then Sandra called the security, and Steve and his new wife were escorted out of the house. Sandra cried, "I loved him. I trusted him, but thank God I listened to my mother. Sometimes, love is not enough. Wisdom and discernment matter.